Sam Hayden-Smith, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Absolutely honoured to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So, as we were just kind of chatting about before we started recording, it's amazing where time has gone in terms of pretty much that whole COVID period. I mean, it was COVID-19, so it was 2019.
Yeah.
Didn't really sort of take effect, at least here in Australia, till 2020. I was reading the news on community radio at the time and just starting to do all the stories about sort of Tom Hanks. It was around the time Tom Hanks was here, and it was all just becoming a bit of a thing. So it wasn't really until 2020. But yeah, it's amazing how that whole period has just disappeared.
So we probably haven't seen each other since 19 or 18, 2018 or 19.
I think it was 2019. I remember us last chatting. Well, it was probably 2019 we caught up, and then into 2020 we were actually chatting on the phone.
Yeah.
Because I remember us chatting about when COVID was sort of starting to be a thing and take hold, and of course no one knew what to expect or what it was going to look like. We're all kind of...
It was stressful times. I was half into a house build that I didn't have a home loan for because I built a house out of shipping containers. So non-traditional build like that, I was just staging it and using cash that I had that was coming in, and then the cash coming in stopped. And so I was in a half-built house, living in a small house that was on the original land. It's an acre in Talabudgera, but I told my wife, we'll just be in that old brick house with one toilet for 6 months. The house will go together quickly and then we'll be good to go. But that turned into 2.5 years.
Yeah, wow.
And it was not just my wife and I, we have 4 kids.
I was just about to say, and you don't exactly have a small family
either. Family of 6 with one toilet, one shower, but can't complain. Yeah.
Made you closer, right?
Yeah.
How did you find that whole period going from what we used to know as normal to...
The biggest thing for me was probably just stopping all travel, because my career was gaining momentum in China. So I was probably flying to China like 4 or 5 times a year. I had back-to-back projects from 17, 18 and 19, and things were going good, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
So it was tough to stop traveling and stop working. Yeah.
Especially when you would have gone from making that your normal, in that you're used to traveling, obviously your family's used to you being away, and that would have become your routine, to then just, like someone just flicked the switch and it all just stopped.
And also the whole international relations things, because China was blamed and horribilized through the whole thing, which wasn't really fair, because even now, who knows, like, it seems pretty obvious that it did come out of a coronavirus lab which was in Wuhan, but everyone's denied that. And the US had fun. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but had the US, like, they knew about that lab, and I think that they had sent scientists there.
Yeah.
So then to say that it came from a wet market in that area, it's just like, that's a little bit too suspicious, coincidental. Yeah, and like everything, there's a lot of, like any incidents, there's a lot of finger pointing, there's a lot of misinformation, whether it's intentional or not. There's a lot of intentional disinformation spread as well. And I think that's one of the ways, whether it's a conspiracy or not, that's one of the ways that a lot of information is used to throw people off the scent, because it gets to the point where you're like, you don't know what's true, what's half true. That's right. And COVID was a pressure test for the way that we get our information, because we started relying on things through social media, and then that's when everyone started policing words and content, and so that's probably the start of the great division of people.
And how interesting was it? You pointed out an awesome point there. Like, at the time, it started to become a thing of, like fake news, the whole fake news thing. a lot of the social media companies were supposedly cracking down on, false information.
Yeah.
Facebook, I think, well, I was going to say famously, but probably more notoriously, were really cracking down on information that was, not true, not proven, not fact-checked.
Yeah, but Mark Zuckerberg recently said that he was forced to do that. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. I was about to say, and has in fact flipped back the other way.
Yeah.
And has gone, more for the free speech.
Yeah. That's right.
Let everyone be responsible themselves for checking the information that they get, Which is very interesting to compare, I think, if you compare that to YouTube, where it's like, we're just the carrier.
Yeah.
Just the same as, like, I guess if you compare it to traditional media, we're not saying that as a traditional channel, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, we're not responsible for the advertisers. We're just the means the information comes through. And I think YouTube have very much taken that approach of, like, I wouldn't say no censorship, but not a great deal of censorship. It's like, you can put the information out there and then it's up to you to decide what you view and what you do with the information. Whereas I think more your Facebook, Facebook, Meta, Instagram, were really proactive on trying to police people's opinions and police.
But it's weird because all of those platforms that you just said all have a comment section below, so everyone's free to post content and then underneath dispute that, and it's not like there's no comment section, that this has been posted, so this is gospel truth. No, it's just someone's opinion or someone's video, and you feel free to discuss it below. Yeah,
exactly. And look, I take that exact approach with Craig Griffin Universe Socials, in as much as there's no moderation on comments, there's no restriction on comments. Like, you can swear, you can do what you like. It's open slather. Now that I say that, I'll be like, wow, was that a good move? But no, seriously, like, that's intentionally my approach. If you want to swear in there, if you want to have an opinion that's extreme one way or extreme the other, it's like, go for it. That's that's your thing. Admittedly, if it was, say, a brand or a business channel, totally understand the need to have some moderation on both the content and the language used in terms of swearing and that kind of thing. But, for something like this, I'd rather just have that more of a free speech approach of
I pretty much only swear in Chinese.
Please do. I mean, look, I encourage swearing at the best of times. I think it shows a great deal of personal liberation. And in any language, it's encouraged. Give us a fucking Chinese.
What's up?
Nice. Apologies to any Chinese viewers. So, how did you find that your personal circumstance, again, going back to the COVID thing, just because that is kind of a major turning point, how did you find at the time that you had to change your day-to-day, your routine, your...
I had to try and keep busy. So we had kids at home, obviously, doing homeschooling. We were halfway through building a house, but I'm not a builder. I wasn't building. I was doing whatever I could. But when the building stopped, there wasn't much that I could do. So I started doing just little landscaping jobs. I'd be out there pulling weeds or planting trees or doing stuff to just keep my mind. Because, we couldn't even go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I honestly feel like I've blocked a bit of it out. Like, I can't remember how I got through that. But at the same time, I don't want to be like, oh, poor me, because it was worse for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone in Victoria and people that lost loved ones. But my dad did die in February 2020. So,
I do remember.
And at first I thought, because I'd just come back from China in January, so when we started finding out, and he passed away from, he had a routine, so when he was peeing, there was blood in his urine, so he had some sort of stones, and he had to go and have a day surgery. So it was supposed to be like kind of in and out. My mum researched which private hospital was the best one. He went up to Brisbane, had the surgery, but my dad didn't want to have the surgery. But in April 2020, my little brother was getting married in Hawaii. So we all the brothers and sisters, because I've got the 6 kids in my family. I'm the second oldest of 6. And so we were all like, Dad, you've got this paranoia about hospitals and doctors and operations, but you'll be fine. It's just like a simple surgery. But it's like everything that my dad imagined could go wrong went wrong.
Yeah,
like
wow.
He had a stroke in recovery, and then he got a pneumonia, and then he got a blood clot, and then within 2 weeks after this, and my dad was super healthy. He was 76, so he was getting up there, but he was super healthy, like one of those guys that walks burly every day and just never drank or smoked or used to run a lot. And so there was that, we also had that to deal with. But then because he had this lung infection and stuff, and it was just February, and then I was like, then when we learned about COVID at the end of February and March 2020, I'm like, did I bring back COVID from China and give it to him, and no one even knew what it was yet? Because it's just so weird that a healthy guy just went downhill so quickly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't. It was just a cluster.
But there's that kind of, was it me? Was it something I did? Which...
And we all just told him to have the surgery. You'll be fine. And so then we had a funeral, and then we're dealing with my mum and her grieving. And if you go back to work and about your business and life, well, then that kind of probably helps you get through tragedy and trauma. But when you're just at home sitting there, then you're in your own head, and I think it was a lot more of a traumatic experience. I think everyone's going to lose their parents, so that's always going to be a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And I think that you don't understand the gravity of it until you go through it. But yeah, I think it was worse in those circumstances.
100%. Yeah. That's to be honest, not having been in that situation that you were in, it hadn't occurred to me. But how much more magnified the whole
everything
thing
was
be,
magnified,
and not having the distraction, like you say, that most people do have of going back to trying to find your way back to those normal routines. Even if the loved one's no longer there, you try and get back to that routine as much as possible and throw yourself back into your work or whatever it is. But and I think those first few maybe the first month, you just keep thinking, I was telling people in China, I'll be back soon, and so you just keep thinking, life's going to get back to normal soon. Everything will go back to normal soon. Grocery prices will come back down. We'll be able to go back to the gym. But as it prolonged, petrol will go back up.
Oh my gosh, it just things got worse and worse. And like I said, I feel like I can't remember how I got through it. I can't remember the anything from March forward in 2020.
No.
Can't remember how long we were locked down even here. How long the kids were at home from school. I can't remember because I just blocked it out.
Definitely. And it's even then, it's not something that you intentionally did. It's not something that you went, oh my God, this is a horrible time, I'm just going to do everything I can to block it out. But I do know that myself from, I remember it because of, as I say, I was doing the community radio at the time, so there was that thing of me doing broadcasts of some news segments. So I was keeping up pretty regularly with what was going on. I mean, we all were, but it kind of allowed me to keep a little bit of it was almost like a journaling each time I was doing an announcement. I'm like, wow, that's happened, this has happened. But I think that whole, I reckon 3-year period from say sort of 20 to 2023, it's just a blur. It is a bit of a flash.
That's right.
And we just had to kind of, I guess, resign ourselves to the fact that, as a lot of people said at the time, this is our new normal for the moment. And what it looks like the other side of this, who knows? Nobody knows. With the benefit of hindsight. Thankfully, we've gone back to pretty much the way things were. I'd like to think we took some upsides out of it. It did make us reevaluate what was important, what wasn't. I think that's one thing for me personally that I took away from it was just that, okay, this is important, that's not it. It kind of gave me a chance to think about, where I fitted into all of those things around me too.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested to know and this is certainly not a COVID podcast. It's just that is kind of.
We were like not going to talk about anything political, and we get straight into politics. I was not political at all before COVID.
Yeah,
but now I'm just, I don't know. It's made me feel like.
And again, I mean, I guess you can take that as a positive. Taking positives wherever you can, which I always try and do. It's good that it's developed a certain awareness.
Yeah.
Whether it's because you've gone, well, hey, I'm going to intentionally be more aware of things, or because you're pissed off, it's an act of rebellion. It's like, damn, this particular group that did this particular thing, so you intentionally try and become more aware of it, I'd be very interested, though, to get your perspective as someone who does have a lot of Chinese friends, fans, followers. What was the difference between our reaction and their reaction? How was it kind of perceived over there? I know there was that a little bit of a kickback of our Prime Minister at the time doing a bit of finger pointing and
they didn't take that finger pointing well because it shut down their economy as well. It's like, do you think that we released this into the world on purpose so that we could somehow benefit from it? Like, we've been screwed. So they didn't like that. I wasn't there, but I know that they all had to be tested like weekly, which is a huge thing for 1.6 billion people. Yeah. But they put in systems pretty quickly to be able to, because a lot of Chinese people live in kind of a little community with, say, 10 towers and then this little park in the middle.
Okay.
So they might have locked down that community. There might have been a convenience store downstairs, and they could have maybe walked down around there. But then I also did see where they boarded up some front doors and stuff, but I don't know if that's propaganda. But all of my friends over there said that it was a tough time. They just watched a lot of movies and got a lot of Uber Eats and waited it out. But I think for the most part they didn't fight against it like we did. They just kind of... The one thing that's good about Chinese is that they seem to be able to sacrifice for the greater good, and whereas we were kind of sold that story that we had to sacrifice for the greater good. Like, for example, I didn't want to get the jab, but then we're told, like, well, but you could kill your mum. Like, you might not get sick, but you might give your mum coronavirus and she'll die. And I just lost my dad, so I'm like, I don't want to kill my mum. So I got the jab out of fear. And I'm not like against vaccinations.
No,
I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I still felt a little bit coerced. And then when it turns out that's not the truth, and then I got COVID anyway, and sure, to be fair, it had morphed into something not as strong as it was before, but you did feel like there was a bit of coercion there.
Especially when you learn after the fact that, some of the companies that made some of the vaccines made some of the largest profits in history.
Yeah.
Billions and billions and billions of dollars made out of vaccines that we had to have.
Yeah.
And again, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you, in as much as I'm certainly not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch. But again, a lot of what we were sold was just straight out horseshit.
Yeah. Unproven, like, nonsense.
Yeah, that's right. But if you're either guilted, like you said, you could kill a family member. And I know myself, like, we only just had Gabrielle Rogers on the show, who similarly
probably spoke about her husband passing away.
Yeah, lost her husband, Andrew Jack, right at the very start of things. And I think that had a great effect on me. It probably made me more I guess, willing to toe the line at the time, in
Yeah.
as much as it's like, well, yeah, I remember people saying to me, well, do you really know, like, do you know anyone that's actually died from coronavirus? And I'm like, well, yeah, I actually do.
Yeah.
So I think that had probably influenced me pretty
Yeah.
heavily as well, similarly to what you would have been with your
And
dad.
I knew people in New York as well that were like, when it started, no, this is real. There were
Yeah.
makeshift morgues on the street. So I'm not denying that this was a thing.
No, not
Yeah.
denying at all. No, I'm
Yeah.
exactly the same, and it's great that you're clear on that. And,
Yeah.
and I'm the same, not denying that it was a thing by any stretch. Like
Yeah.
there were people dying, and it was a dramatic situation. It was one of the toughest things that I think we'd all been through at the time in terms of it, on such a level, on such a scale. But there'd been little outbreaks prior to that, chicken flus and swine
Yeah,
flus
swine
and
flu.
those kind of, but nothing like this. This
Yeah.
was just totally unprecedented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about COVID.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I had no intentions of
Yeah,
even
neither did
mentioning it.
I.
I guess the only reason we started on, we did start talking about it prior to the show, was just the fact that it is kind of a milestone. It's like the before COVID, after COVID, and we were both commenting about how basically that whole 3-year period had just disappeared.
Yeah.
That, we'd been in quite regular contact
Yeah.
prior to that, and I think things just got super busy, and just it was a strange time. It's like it just, that 3 years just flashed by.
I think in terms of career, one thing I would say about COVID is that I wish that before COVID I had done social media, because before COVID I thought my acting career is taking off and I'm working back to back, and I'm not going to do like TikTok. And I would post things on Instagram. I've always had Instagram, but
Yeah.
I never thought that I should try and be any sort of influencer. And then during COVID, when all the acting work stopped for a while and a lot of actors had no work, it was the influencers that blew up, because they had this direct contact, this direct connection with their audiences and fans, and were able to live stream and film things every day, and even just like vlog, and they blew up and they became more powerful than actors. And so if I had been doing Chinese social media before that, man, COVID would have been a way better experience, and I would have been probably able to support myself financially through those 3 years.
Yeah, and look, that basically brings up 2 points to me. My initial reaction to what you just said is that anyone that already had any kind of an audience or a presence was able to leverage off that really quickly. But I think the thing that was very interesting, and I know you certainly did this at the time, the people that were able to pivot really quickly and go, hey, I'm at home, I've got the access to these tools, let's do something with it.
Yeah.
I remember watching a lot of Ryan Serhant, the real estate guy in New York, who at the time had admittedly previously done $1 Million Listing, so he did have that little bit of a presence anyway, but he jumped straight on to, I can remember him doing posts and like posting out the window or posting out the street. He, I believe, lived maybe 2 blocks away from where he worked, and he'd be like, this is me walking through the streets of New York, and it was like I Am Legend. There was no one anywhere. It was around that time where a lot of people were either had to stay pretty much indoors or couldn't go anywhere, or they'd actually left New York, like they'd packed up. And I think it's at one stage he even did the same. They ended up going sort of upstate New York, but I can just remember some of the footage, and there's no one. But he pivoted.
I Am Legend.
It was crazy. But he pivoted really quickly, and I know, like you said, a lot of other people did and were able to jump on that pretty quickly. And
Well, I had another Instagram account, Our Container Home, which I was going to document the build of because a lot of people are interested in container homes, so I was going to
Is that still up?
It's still up.
What's the handle?
Our Container Home.
Our Container Home.
Yeah, at
All
Our
one
Container
word.
Home, yeah. But because I stopped building and had no money, like I stopped making that. And so I feel like if I had somehow just kept doing things on that and documenting that would have been good. But in hindsight, I probably just had some sort of post.
And while I haven't seen it in person, the final product, from the photos and anything that you've posted that I've seen, it looks sensational.
It's pretty cool. Like everyone that comes, they're just like, oh, I wanted to do this, but now I know why people don't do it, because it's not that easy. There's some big things that you don't think about. There's big crane days, there's a lot of welding, and just kind of trying to fill up gaps and stuff that you wouldn't have if you just clad the whole thing with a color bond.
Yeah. You were the first person I know that had ever done it. You
Yeah.
were the first. I mean, there was certainly examples of where people had more built sheds and that kind of thing out of container homes. You were the first person I was aware of.
Even when I tell people that I've done a container home, they think it's going to be like 2 smashed together. And I'm like, no, it's actually 12 containers. I've got like 2 levels, cantilevers, open area in the middle. And it's pretty, like, it's the biggest one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy. I think sometimes, when you go into a project, you need to be a little bit naive, or else you wouldn't have
100%. Could not agree with you anymore.
Or else you wouldn't have done it in the first place.
Yeah.
So, lucky I was stupid.
Yeah, you kind of like, the early frontier, the people crossing America for the first time. It's like, if you knew how hard it was or what was going to be out there, you probably wouldn't have done it.
That's right.
But just that blind leap of faith and just going, let's just do it.
Yeah. Let's go. We've got to get to California.
Yeah, exactly. There's gold in them there hills. Which comes back to another point, jumping back to, I guess, where we first met. I'm leading up to California, but going back to where we first met. So the scene was set. It was circa 2015.
2015, was it?
Which, again, is crazy. It's like
10 years.
Ago.
Yeah. 10 years.
So a bit of a shout out there to the Warehouse Workshop.
Yep.
And it's like we were both launching our acting careers at the time and cutting our teeth. And had you had previous acting experience prior to that?
I had acted before. I did a couple of years doing a screen acting course at NIDA in Sydney, but then the global financial crisis came, and so I was married with 2 young kids in Sydney in 2009, and I was like, man, I don't want to be a broke actor, bartender, because I don't even know how to make a drink. So that's when I convinced my wife. I said, I'll stop acting and we'll move to China, because I had a friend that said, come to China and we'll start some sort of business. So I put acting aside and we moved to China for 3 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you lived there for 3 years.
Yeah. In Xiamen, a city between Shanghai and Guangzhou. It's beautiful.
And so that was, what year was that?
That was 09 to kind of 2000 and end of 2012, 13.
Okay.
So I'd just come back, and then I got an agent again, but I just felt like a bit rusty. So that's why I did the Warehouse Workshop, because if you don't pick up a script for even a few months, it's just like your ability to memorize lines and just make choices and stuff just goes. It's like a muscle, and you need to like work that out. So I'm one of those actors that thinks that even if I'm a working actor, I'd love to just do some acting classes just to keep sharp and fresh.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was great for me to just have that. With 3 days a week.
Yeah,
3 days a week.
As part of the full-time course, So it was January 2015. We both went into that course. So shout out to the Warehouse Workshop.
Tom
Acting
McSweeney,
Studio.
Phil Holden.
Yeah. Phil Holder, Tom McSweeney, shout out to them both, and all of the other great staff along the way there as well. Elisa James, there was so many people. Stefan. David Macecaff. Shout out to Stefan. And of course, the legend that is Macecaff.
Yeah.
Who, going back to microphones and cameras and the production side of thing, it's interesting how many of those things stick with you. Yeah. And look, I'll be 100% honest and say at the time, because all I wanted to do was be an actor, I'm like, what the fuck is with all this production stuff?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about cameras and camera angles and
holding the boom.
Yeah, composition and all that other stuff. with the benefit of hindsight, it was one of the best things ever.
Yeah.
It was one of the best parts about that course compared to a lot of other acting courses that are just acting. You got to see things from a production side, so you've got a great understanding of how the whole process works. And again, there's so much right through, through the editing and the whole production side of things that I use all of the time. I wouldn't be able to do half of this podcast if it hadn't have been for what we learned in that course.
Learn a bit about sound, a little bit about camera angles, a little bit about lighting. Yeah.
And it makes you a better actor by understanding those things.
Yeah.
It makes you a better actor because you have an understanding of angles, of composition, of light, of what the editing process is actually going to be like, and just having that overall understanding of things. And such a great course. Had a ball. I mean,
I went back for a second year. Like they had a not masterclass. They just offered like a second year.
Yeah, I remember you could do the second year. Yeah.
So I went back and did that. It was great with a smaller group. I did like our big group. How many was in our group? Like 16 or something?
I was going to say 16.
16,
Yeah. And I think at the time, one of the things that we kind of, I guess, bonded on was being the older students.
There was some young kids in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Fresh out of high school.
16-ish.
Oh yeah. Nick.
Yeah.
And there were some young girls straight out of high school.
Yeah, 100%. But I think we also kind of connected in as much as I think we have, I was going to say have a very similar sense of humour.
Yeah.
So we definitely connected on that. And I remember saying to you at the time, like, I'm so glad you're in this course. It's good that we and you're like, well, yeah, it's because we're like, apart from Linda, it was pretty much the three of us that were like the grown-ups.
And Chelsea.
And Chelsea. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think I when I went to NIDA, when I did this course, the guys that put that together were NIDA graduates that went through the 4-year program and did the degree, and then when they came out, they just would go to auditions and realize that they weren't very screen ready because they'd done all this Shakespeare and
it had a very heavy
theatre. And so they put together a course for screen acting, and that's the course that I did. But they told me that NIDA doesn't usually take people straight out of high school because they want people to have a few years experience, because this is all part of your actor's toolkit, and you need to learn some stuff and take that on board, and that all becomes part of your craft. And so I think that's another reason that we bonded, because we had that life experience. And some of those young kids in the course, I actually met up with a few of them. We went to Paddock Bakery, and one of them, I forgot who said, but they said, "Are you still doing the acting thing?" And I was like, "What do you mean the acting thing?" Like, I am an actor. I'm a thespian. That's not a thing that I do.
Yeah.
Whether I have to go and work as a waiter or cleaning floors to supplement my income, I'm still an actor. I'm still doing the actor thing.
Yeah.
So I will always do the actor thing. It's not like a passing phase that I went through. Yeah, fad. Yeah. I'm an actor.
Which, I mean, look, I totally get it. If you are that young and you're still trying to work out what you're going to do.
True.
And I was talking about this exact thing only just with Gabrielle Rogers, who had gone through the NIDA course of things, which if you're going to be an actor, more in that time frame, that's what you did. Like you went to your Mel Gibsons, anyone from that kind of era was a NIDA graduate.
It guaranteed you
that's
work in the industry.
That was pretty much the only way. I mean, there were
Whopper. NIDA and Whopper.
I was just going to say, and then later Whopper in Western Australia. So that was more your Hugh Jackmans and that generation. But prior to that, it was like NIDA or nothing. That was the path.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle Rogers was only just saying the same thing, that in this day and age, sure, that going to NIDA or going down the path of doing a degree is great, especially if you're young, just out of school, not sure exactly what you want to do. Thinking about maybe something in the performance space, then it certainly is a great way to go. But there is another option, and I think kind of related more to us in terms of doing shorter courses. Our course was I think just over 6 months at the time. And also that ability to learn on the job, to learn by actually auditioning, to learn by doing student films, free work, doing short films. There's so much information out there now on YouTube, on Google, that you don't have to go down the path of doing a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Sean Marshall, did the 4-year degree in one of the universities in Sydney. And same thing at the time, like that was kind of the way you went about things. You know, that was the path. That was the way you did it.
It certainly doesn't guarantee you a career anymore doing a 4-year degree. But what I think it might give you is, because you know how some people become successful and then they've still got this, they still doubt themselves. Like, I haven't done a degree. Am I qualified? Have I fluked it here? And then there's a term for it that I can't think of.
Impersonator.
An impersonator syndrome. So I think if you've done the hard yards and studied all the greats like Stella Adler, Stanislavski, all the techniques, then you would probably believe a bit more in your craft.
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know. If I could go back, I probably would try and get into NIDA straight out of high school, or try a few times. But I just, at the time, when we were around that age, it just kind of felt like Home and Away or Neighbours was your only career path. Yeah,
that's right. And to be honest, it is a really different animal, the entertainment industry in Australia, compared to some of the opportunities that do exist in somewhere like America, just on sheer population.
Yeah.
It's a totally different, and talk about punching above our weight for 26, 27 million people. You know, the successes that we've had internationally, both in terms of the productions, the films that we've done, the
amount of superheroes, Thor,
100%,
the Hulk, who else?
Like our talent,
as Wolverine, well as Wolverine, Thor, Hulk. Come on,
definitely, and that's just in the superheroes. You know, I mean, what about James Bond?
Yeah, that's right.
Like way back.
Yeah,
we had in Australia. How many countries apart from England, apart from Great Britain, can say they had a James Bond? Well, we had a James Bond. But I mean, punching above our weight, even behind the scenes, even now in special effects.
Yeah,
you know, we lead the world.
There's stunts. We've got great stuntmen too. We've got a great stunt training school.
Cinematographers, editors, so many.
Yeah.
You know, both cast and crew, on the camera and behind the camera. We punch so far above our weight. It's just mind blowing. And what a great industry! Like,
it is. Yeah, because it's just, you never know what you're going to be doing.
Yeah,
so it's exciting. Yeah,
I think we were talking earlier about pivotal moments in your life and things that you look back on. That internship that we did at the Warehouse Workshop 2015, for me, is something I'll always carry with me. Not only in terms of what I learnt about acting, but what I learned about myself.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this previously. Again, this sort of came up talking to Gabrielle, just those things that you learn about yourself. And I didn't see any of that coming.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to learn about acting and that's it. It's like doing an apprenticeship. It's like learning to be a mechanic or a plumber. You know, but the amount of things that I learned about myself through that process were just mind-blowing. Things that you carry with you.
That's right.
Since then, just mind-blowing.
Because you're able to play a character, but sometimes to play a character, you have to strip things from yourself. So you have to know yourself. Most people never see themselves on camera. At the very least, they hear themselves their voice and they're like, oh, I hate the sound of my voice. But we get used to the sound of our voice and we get used to watching ourselves on the screen.
Objectively.
And then objectively, and you'll be like, oh, I always do this thing. Or I didn't notice that about myself, that I have this thing that I do, little nuance or this little habit or this little tick, I don't know. And so you can try and work on that to get rid of it. And then if you're going to play this character, you can kind of pick up his things and put that into... So I always tell my kids, I think everyone should do acting classes because it really teaches you about yourself.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I know myself, at the time I was doing quite a fair bit of theatre as well, which I hear both schools of thought on. Some people say, look, acting's acting, it's exactly the same thing. Other people say, which I tend to lean more towards, that even though it is acting, a lot of the skills do carry over.
Yeah.
It's its own beast as well.
Yeah, it's its own beast. Yeah.
Things that are very specific to just theatre. But that ability to, I guess the cliche is to stand up in front of people, rip open the chest cavity, and you're kind of exposing yourself emotionally, hopefully not physically, but exposing yourself to an audience and kind of revealing what's inside. It's a totally different thing. Unlike on the camera where you can just go, okay, let's just stop there.
Yeah.
I just need to. There's no stop.
Yeah.
Like you're on for that hour or 90 minutes or however long the play is, and it's like it's just you and the audience, and you're out there.
And there's you draw energy from the audience too. Like if you do a play that runs for 5 nights or something, on the second night on this particular line you might get an audience reaction. So on the next night you might deliver that line and you're waiting for the same laughter that came from last night, but it doesn't come.
Crickets.
It's like there's like different energies, and so it's just this thing between you and the audience, and it's great.
It's live. It's real
live.
time. Yeah. And I imagine stand-up comedians go through that same thing.
I bet. Yeah.
It's like you deliver that line, you're like, okay, I know this is gold, and the next night you're ready to deliver the punchline, and then there's nothing.
Bombs.
Like, okay, wow. So you kind of learn that, and that's not me. That's just that crowd on the night. It could be related to my energy or my delivery, but it's just that audience on the night.
That's right.
I did the majority of my theatre through Murwillumbah Theatre Company.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Had a ball. Great bunch of people. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
See a lot of them still regularly around the place and keep up with them on socials. I was doing a play, Bridesmaids. Secret Bridesmaids Business was the play.
Secret Bridesmaids Business.
Yeah, so I was basically about to get married, and I'd also been on with one of the bridesmaids as well. And then this had come to light through
previously.
Pretty much right up until the point of the preparations for the wedding. And so like they're getting their dresses fitted, and one of the bridesmaid that I'd been having the affair with comes over. Yeah. So there's this whole thing of like, the tension between me and my fiance, and now he's the bridesmaids and they know each other, and it was so cleverly written. It was such a great play. But the reactions, because I was basically just... you interpret how you're going to play the role. Yeah. So I was playing it. Essentially it was written that I was a bit of a Chad. I was an asshole. A Chad, to use the vernacular. I was an asshole. Basically I was on with one of the bridesmaids when I'm about to get married. So I'm not a great guy to begin with. I played it that I did genuinely love my fiance, but I was just basically a kind of someone with faults. Not a great guy, not a bad guy. Yeah. Not a good guy, obviously. But the reactions that you would get from the crowd, and again, different crowds, different nights, and there were some lines in the play like saying to my fiance, like, this has been terrible for me. A line that I still use with my wife. It was a bit of a joke. It's like, this has been terrible for me, you know. And the reaction from just that line from the crowd, and I remember doing it, might have been the second or third night of the performance, and this lady jumps to her feet out of the crowd and yells out, "You're nothing but a fucking bastard!"
Oh, what?
And like for half a second, I'm jumped out of character, and I'm like, grabbing the head. I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, oh, I guess I am. And it's like, you know, you have all these things going on in your head, and you're trying to stay in your character, but it's like, well, this guy is an asshole.
Bit close
like,
for home
that
for her,
reaction's
maybe.
totally deserved. And I'm like, great. Like, feed off that, you know.
Yeah.
And then even after the play, you're saying goodbye to people and thanks for coming along. And I don't know if it was the same person or something. Yeah, exactly. You're like, well, it's just a role, it's just an actor. But just some of the reaction, it's like, that was so good. Like, you're such a fucking mongrel, but that was so well done. You know, it was such a great experience. Just
awesome.
You sort of carry with you.
Tough crowd.
Yeah. Done much in the way of theatre?
I did just after COVID, when I still couldn't travel. I got an offer to do a 2-person show. So it was. Do you remember Dee Dee Leslie?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was just me and her on
Wow.
a stage, and it was probably like, I think it was like 15-minute play. So it was just like a 15-minute play, but just me and her. So I hadn't done theatre since probably high school, so that was terrifying for me, and that's why I did it. Just like, so all the lines are me and her, and it's just me and her up there, and you don't leave to change or anything. It's just like a one act, one scene play, and it was called Checkmate. So it's just me and her playing a chess game, but all the dialogue, she knows that I've been having an affair, and it's just like we're talking while we're playing chess.
Wow.
And that was great.
That would have been great.
Good challenging thing for me. Yeah.
Which you get so much out of.
Yeah. It was just at Southport, at the Little Theatre in Southport.
Yes, yeah. I've seen some great stuff up there.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, we saw, I think it was the Jersey Boys, the play up there, the musical.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely brilliant.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, I wish, like, if I had studied this straight out of high school, and I probably would have been interested in doing some musical theatre as well. I love musical theatre. It's not like I just want to be a screen actor. That's what I want to be now.
Yeah.
But if I could have done some musical theatre earlier, that would have been great.
Yeah.
I love musicals. I love Broadway productions.
You can sing?
I think I can sing all right. Yeah.
I, unfortunately for me, fall into that category of having a voice that I consider to be okay. It's certainly benefited me a lot, both as a screen actor, great as a theatre actor, because I'm naturally quite loud. My voice is quite resonant.
Yes.
But I can't sing.
Oh, really?
I can't sing a note. The second I try and sing, it's just horrible. I can speak, I just can't sing. So for me, the musical thing was never on the table. But theatre, absolutely.
I've got a long background in karaoke.
Yeah. Actually, I've heard you sing. I've heard you do karaoke. You are a bit of a natural. Very good. I remember us going out just after we graduated.
Oh, on that island.
Chevron Island. Yeah. We went out to that bar and you were doing some karaoke then. Actually, I think you were doing karaoke in Chinese.
Was I?
Yeah.
They had Chinese songs there? Oh, I can't remember that.
I don't know if you were just singing in Chinese or if you'd actually found a Chinese song.
I don't know.
But yeah, no.
You know, I had me singing a Chinese song go crazy viral on Chinese TikTok. It was just last year in May. This a Taiwanese singer came to Australia. He came to Melbourne, and I went to the concert, and I sang along, and my friend filmed me, uploaded it to TikTok. 80 million views.
Yeah, that was insane.
80 million. But I wasn't doing social media yet. So after that, I actually started.
Yeah.
My friend was like, "You got to do it."
Yeah,
So that's when I started.
It is such an important side to the entertainment industry at the end of the day, and I remember saying this in 2015 and I stand by it now, it's show business. It's a
Socials.
business.
Yeah.
Socials, yeah.
Yeah.
You are a product, whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
for reasons good, bad, or different. And I think in a lot of cases, you being a product is a bad thing because sometimes, it's basically you're trying to find that balancing act between the creative and the business or the marketing side of things. Rightly or wrongly, they have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think if the balance goes too far one way or the other, it's not good. I think it has to meet somewhere in the middle. It still has to be it's a product, it's a business, but it also has to give emphasis to the creative side of things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think the entertainment industry now has got to a point where they want to play too safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing, they would rather make the 120th Spider-Man movie, and I love Spider-Man, don't get me wrong, nothing against Spider-Man, but they'd rather make the 120th Spider-Man movie than see some new up-and-coming independent film get a run.
Yeah.
That, what was that? I think it was called A Street Cat Named Bob. Did you ever see that film? Absolutely brilliant. A true story, like a lot of those good independent films.
Australian or
English.
English.
It was an English one, yeah. Real story about a guy who'd been living on the street, and he had this cat had basically kind of adopted him. Absolutely brilliant. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Same to anyone else. Check it out if you haven't seen it. A Street Cat Named Bob.
Okay.
But I remember at the time thinking, this is not your blockbuster. This has no CGI, or very little if there was any. It's just a great fucking story.
Yeah.
It's kind of the reason that Doctor Who was so successful back in the 70s and 80s. Sure, all of the stuff was made out of painted styrofoam and, that kind of thing, but the stories were so good, it didn't matter. And then I think Hollywood swung too far the other way and went, we have to have the greatest CGI, and Transformers has to have so many mega battles squeezed into the one film that by the time they got to like the fifth one, it was like all battle and no story. It's like, so again, it had to find that balance back the other way. The story's everything. That's why I think shows like any of Taylor Sheridan stuff, any of the Yellowstone stuff is so successful because the stories are so good. If you can combine that with great budgets, with special effects, with great actors, great writers, great direction, great production, then you're going to have a massive, massive hit on your hands that's going to break all records. But coming back to my point, I think we still have to try and find that balance of the creative. The creative is as important as the business, and the business as important of the creative. So I'll jump off my soapbox.
TV's so good now.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Do you think that, going back to the COVID, do you think that COVID like shortened our concentration spans? So a lot of people, like a movie's too long for them now, and they prefer to watch a show, even if they binge watch that show?
I don't think it was so much COVID. Yeah. I think it was social media in general at the time. Media. And I do think it was happening prior to COVID.
Yeah.
It was that everything went from being longer form to short form.
Yeah.
Videos and everything got shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point. I mean, like even Twitter, it was 160 characters, I think, originally.
Oh, and then it cut it.
Yeah, when it started. So everything had to be really concise and to the point. And that's cool. Like that was that platform. It was aimed at short form text. It was almost like text messaging a friend, but it went out to everyone. That was the platform. But I think social media at the time generally made us have short attention spans. It made everything, shorter and shorter and shorter. Yeah. Whether or not that happened more during COVID or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I love shows now, though.
But yeah, 100%. But and so you think that's had an impact on why TV's become more
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's because there's the convenience of staying home and watching streaming.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them now.
But 100%, I think...
I do feel sad when I go to the movies, though, and there's like 10 people in there. Yeah. Because I still love that experience.
You still go to the movies? What? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's sad.
But, I mean, the cinemas are now feeling, I guess, what the drive-thrus went through.
Yeah. It's too expensive in Australia, too.
Yeah, that's right. But, I mean, the television is certainly where the writers have gone. It's where the budgets have gone.
Yeah.
And therefore, that's...
White Lotus is like $50-60 million an episode.
Yeah. Well, I think, even... Game of Thrones at the time.
Oh, Game of Thrones, yeah.
I forget what it was. It was at 30 million or 50 million an episode or whatever it was at the time, the budgets.
Far out.
It was...
In multiple countries. They had like B units that never even met that. They had like a crew in Tunisia, a crew in Ireland,
There was Croatia. There was all kinds of places. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. And it's led to some of the best television ever. I mean, back in the day, it was like, you're a television actor. You're not a film actor. Yeah. And now, ironically, I think it's swung back completely the other way. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of big film actors that have jumped over to TV because that's where the money is. That's where the audience is. That's where the
stability is too. Because you get on a good show and you could go for
do
a few
your 5,
seasons.
6 seasons. Yeah. If it's good, some do longer, some do less. Yeah. But some of those series that we've seen as a result, like your Game of Thrones, are just phenomenal, like mind blowing. And yet, I find myself sometimes sitting down trying to find some really good films, and they're still out there, don't get me wrong, there's still great films being made, but again, it's the money's more, or it's gone over to television. That's where the money is. That's where all of the great writers and the producers and the directors are going. Do you have a preference? Are you happy? Would you be happy to do either, or?
Well, because film, I've only really done a couple. I don't have like a career spanning decades or anything. I've been lucky to do a few big budget things, my last few things. But
I can still remember the first time you got that film on Netflix.
Chosen. Yeah, not Chosen. The Chosen. Not to be confused with the biblical The Chosen.
Yeah.
Which is great. Mine's Chosen. Yeah.
Chosen.
It was a big deal it was only like $5 million budget. We shot in Sydney.
Only?
Yeah, only.
It was sensational.
The reason that was a big deal, though, is because that was the first Chinese-Australian co-production to be sold to Netflix.
Right.
So that's why that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And then that led to something else where I shot in Vegas for a few months, a Chinese production, and then that led to a big budget thing in 2019 about the 70th anniversary of the Communist Party, where I played how do you say that? Sometimes I think in Chinese and it's embarrassing. A diplomat.
Yes.
An a US diplomat.
Yeah.
And his parents were missionaries, so he was born in China. It's a real guy.
Oh, okay.
And so that was really cool to play like a real person from history. And because you're able to do research on them and read real journals and information about them. So this guy, his parents were missionaries in China, so he was born there and grew up there, and so that's how he spoke Chinese. Right. And then he went back to America to university and came back to China in the 40s as a diplomat, and he met Mao Zedong. And this guy actually, it was interesting, he was trying to get President Roosevelt at the time. So there was a scene that I had in the Oval Office with President Roosevelt. He was trying to get him to support the communists at the time because Japan was invading. Right. And there was two parties, the communists and the nationalists. And they were kind of butting heads.
Yeah, they were at loggerheads.
Yeah, but this guy, his name was John Service, he was trying to get Roosevelt to supply weapons and meet both of them and help them to get rid of Japan first, and then they can work out their own problems.
Yeah.
But he actually snobbed the communists. He snobbed Mao Zedong. He didn't come over to see him, and he didn't fly Mao Zedong over to see him. And then that actually is Mao Zedong's origin story, and that's what led him to go to the Soviets for support. Because at the time he was more of a he was called a communist, but he was more like a socialist, like a Bernie Sanders type. He wanted what was good for the people. He wanted equality, and he wanted to help the farmers, and he was a good guy.
Yeah, rather than more of like a Leninist.
Yeah, but
hardcore.
then because he was snubbed by America, he went the Lenin-Stalin way, because that's who held his hand, and then he turned into Darth Vader.
Wow.
Don't play this in China. Chairman Mao. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting, and that's what started a 25-year or whatever no US-China negotiations thing, because he turned into a communist. America was so scared of the word communist, even though it didn't really mean, he wasn't a communist, he was a socialist at the time. So if this character in history had been listened to by the president, things would have been way different.
And do you think in real life that still has an effect today? Is that still...
Yeah, I mean, I still really hate it how US and China butt heads. It really annoys me. And a lot of Chinese people call Australians like puppets, like we'll just do whatever the US does. And I just try and say, hey, we were attacked by Japan as well. Like, if it wasn't, like, Japan bombed Darwin, and if it wasn't for the US, we would have been taken over by Japan. And then they're like, oh, okay. So we do have this history with the US. Yeah. And I grew up in the US. I lived in America from 4 till 12, and I used to love and just worship everything American and think that America was better than Australia. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't think America's been the best country in the world since the 80s. And it's just like progressively got worse. And now I'm just like, I'm so grateful that I live in Australia, and we can kind of learn from America's mistakes. But I definitely think that we need to not listen to US propaganda about China, because China has not started wars. China just tries to protect their borders. America's the one that's starting all the wars. They fearmonger us that China is going to take over this and there and everywhere. But what war has China started?
I do think that comes from a place of, and I'm not saying in every case, because there are things that happen behind the scenes without going down the whole conspiracy theory side of things. But I do think I almost cringe to have to use this cliche, because it is one that is done to death. But it is so true that with great power comes great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. And as much as I cringe to have to use that, it is so appropriate. I do think there is a position where it's not about being the world police, but it is about being almost like the responsible adult in the world, on the world stage. And I'm not saying America is the only one or should be the only one. I do think that any of the superpowers should be in that position of going, okay, sure, let's do what's best for us first and foremost. Any country should. That's what you do. Yeah. But also having that obligation to go, and let's also, now that I'm okay, let's look after our neighbours, and let's look after our area, and let's look after the whole planet. And I think that's a responsibility too. I think America, it's they often describe it as the great social experiment. Like, you're talking about a country that's only, 400 odd years old? Like, it's brand new. Yeah. As we're only just over 200 years old, and we're not even as far down that. But I mean, new countries. So with what they've been able to achieve in that time, you're putting the first man on the moon. A lot of these firsts. Yeah. It is phenomenal. But yeah, it's very interesting just to see.
But you say look at what the US has been able to achieve in its history. Yeah. Let me say, look at what China has been able to achieve in 20 years. Yeah. They've taken probably 700 million people out of poverty.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've looked at the best of the US, the best of Japan. They've looked at Japan's high-speed rail and be like, we need high-speed rail.
Yeah.
They've built the best high-speed rail systems in the world. They've built, like when my family would come and visit us, and this is 2009 to 2012, they'd come and be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that life was so good here and that China's so advanced. And like, you should see it now.
Yeah.
Like when I went there, when I could finally go after COVID, you should see the electric vehicles in China. They are unbelievable. And that's just happened in the 3 years that I couldn't travel there. I come back there and there's like all these super quiet vehicles that look like, you look like you're in a scene from Back to the Future where Marty's gone to the future, and there's these, all the, wow. Like they make Teslas look a little bit boring, some of these Chinese EVs.
Yeah. And
just the skyscrapers and the public transport, like Xiamen where we lived is an island off the like about 1 or 2 kilometers off the coast, so there's a few land bridges and a tunnel, but it was pretty packed. It was like, I think there's like 2 or 3 million people on this island.
Yeah.
But they built a subway system underneath like existing infrastructure, and they did it in like 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Like
it's mind blowing.
We can't even widen the M1 in.
Yeah. It takes us 7 years to put another lane on the M1 motorway.
Yeah. So
it's still not finished.
That's right.
Just by the way, here we are in May 2025. Still not finished. Still don't have a high-speed train in Australia. I know we don't have the population but like China gets stuff done, and it's not the. Do you think we use that as an
iron
excuse
fist
that we don't
society
have the
that America?
population?
I think we do. Yeah.
I get that there are financial constraints and there are population constraints, but I think sometimes we fall back on that. Like, you go back to when we were kids, we had like Ford and Holden being made here.
Yeah.
We had a lot of we had a train that just about went all around the country. Like, there were trains between capital cities and stuff.
Yeah.
And we got rid of them. It's like,
why?
What were we thinking?
Why does a train from the Gold Coast to Brisbane to the Brisbane airport take like 2 hours and cost you $45?
Yeah.
It's like.
So I do think we use that as an excuse sometimes of going, we don't have the population to support it. It's like, well, do we or have we just not made that a priority?
Yeah.
And I do think there are other factors at play. For example, I think half the reason that we don't have a national... I mean, I'm of the belief that there should be trains between every capital city in Australia.
Yeah.
You should be able to travel anywhere by train. And, the bulk of our goods should be
because the ones in China, like when they can go like 300 k's an hour. Like, we could get to Sydney in 3 or 4 hours and not have to go through airport security checks.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be awesome.
Have you seen that? I don't know if you've seen it. It's somewhere in China. I've only seen it online. There's a high-speed train. And I'm trying to think how it works. It's been that long since I saw it. But you don't get off the carriage. It somehow docks at the platform, but the train keeps going. Have you seen that?
No.
It's bizarre. I don't know if it's actually a thing, but it works. Like, it's super high.
It's got to stop.
It doesn't.
It's going like 300 k's an hour. How can it?
It slows down, but I think it goes from
you just have to
300 k an hour to 200 k an hour. If anyone knows about it, put the link in the comments. But it somehow slows down enough that this like, just say one section, one carriage stops at the station, the train keeps going.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it picked up another one or there's some kind of thing. And then, so it didn't even have to stop. It was just this mind-blowing technological...
Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. I remember seeing it and just going, wow. But even like I only saw a video only just the other day of the high-speed train in Japan. And there's a Japanese guy watching it. And even he he sees it. I don't know if he hadn't seen it before, but he sees the train go past, and he turns to the camera and he's just like, "Wow!" Just the sheer speed of actually seeing it. It's one thing to see it, online or in a video, but to actually see it in real life, it's mind blowing.
It's weird to be on it too, because you see the speed up on the digital display and you go, I'm going 320 k's an hour. You thought your face would be like spies like us, like but it just feels like you're going 30 k's an hour.
I think that's unusual because it is out in the open. I think we could achieve even faster speeds if it's contained, if it's actually in a tunnel. Whether that tunnel's above ground or below ground, but I think the speeds that we could achieve that way,
that'd be cool.
Because then you're not having to worry about traffic, about cars, about crossings, about wildlife, things that could be on the track.
I do think, I'm not saying that a one-party system is better, because I'm not like a communist or anything, but you can definitely see the advantages of a one-party system, planning for the future and doing things long-term, not just trying to look good for this administration and then blaming everything on the last guy, or letting everything build up for the next guy, So
because even if they've been in office, I'm not talking about any specific party here or any particular government, but regardless of how long they've been in office, they still want to blame the last guy. That was all them. That was all them.
Whether it's Australia,
wouldn't matter
America,
if they've been in government for 50 years. We inherited that. And it's this very short. The classic example is back to the M1, back to the motorway. Like, why the fuck are they only putting in another lane or another 2 lanes? Rather than going, what are we going to need 20 years from now? What are we going to need 30 years from now? What are we going to need 50 years from now? Okay, what we really need to do is have a totally separate motorway that bypasses the Gold Coast altogether. Let's start work on that. And they've talked about it. They've started talking about it, but there's no actual concrete plans.
It's going to do a lot more than a light rail that goes to Palm Beach, like what?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. And any successful large city relies on its infrastructure. The ones that are successful are the ones that have a great infrastructure and a great public transport system.
That's right.
And without that, you're letting yourself down. But back to your point, that inability to see beyond the next election.
Plan long term. You got 1.6 billion people. You got to think we need to feed these people. So we'll invest. They do invest in other markets. They might build a train line in Africa, or just have solid trading partners in Australia. Australia needs to be smarter about not selling everything to China. Make sure that we retain ownership of things, or else we will become China. Not by attack, but just because we've sold everything to them. We're not a political podcast. We're not trying to, but we don't own Australia Post. We don't own everything's privatized in Australia.
And I think there is room for both, but I think I've always said that there are certain things that should be privatized because of market forces, because of the efficiency that business can bring, but there's also certain things that you shouldn't privatize. There are certain things, like, I guess the example that always springs to my mind is jails. To me, that's the sort of thing you should never privatize.
Should not privatize. Or else the prison system becomes a business.
It's like...
So why has the US got the most incarcerated percentage of population? Because you privatized the prison system and made it big business.
And it becomes about how can we get more people into that system, about how we can reduce costs to the lowest point. There are some things that just should not be privatized, but then there are... I mean, look, I'm all for the capitalist system. I'm all for business. I'm all for... for profits, but it also has to... It should never... Look, my secret to the universe is balance. Balance is everything. That's the secret to the universe is not 42. The secret to the universe is balance. So we have to find that balance between profitability, and also the greater good.
Yeah.
Doing good for ourselves in the here and now, and doing good for our future generations, 100, 1,000 years from now. You know, having that long-term focus, which we just don't have.
Don't outsource everything to China and then blame China for making everything cheaper. Or you wanted them to make, you know, there's all kinds of stuff on Chinese social media about Trump's tariffs and blaming China for the cost of things. But there's all these videos saying, yeah, we make the Hermes bag, for example, but we make it for $1,000, and we might make $100. We give it back we send it back to Paris, and they do the final stitching and logo, and then they sell it for $30,000.
Yeah.
Like China's like, we're not the ones making the money.
Yeah.
You've outsourced us so that you can make more margin.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And again, balancing that off against, there's a great emphasis now on, you know, what do they call it, the modern slavery requirements, and where things are sourced, going through the entire supply chain. I think it started with coffee, went into chocolate, and now it's becoming
blood diamonds.
Yeah, exactly. It's becoming a thing across a lot of products, especially retail products now, of going back to the initial source of the initial products, and what countries they come from, and sort of what the conditions are. So again, we have to balance that out against, you're not comparing apples with apples, you're comparing apples with oranges in terms of incomes and you know, what people are making to make one thing in one country with another. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out in terms of...
I think a lot of Westerners think that things are being made in China for cheap labor, but that might have been the case in the beginning, but the real cheap stuff has already left China. It's gone to Vietnam and Bangladesh and Cambodia. Like, the stuff made in China now is very advanced and technical. Like, you can't dog on China for making iPhones, because nowhere else in the world would be able to make iPhones. The amount of engineers and, I don't know the term for it, tech people that know about the chip and all the science and tech that goes into an iPhone, they're only found in China in that kind of concentration. So so it's interesting. China's got so many educated engineers and IT people now.
So have some countries let themselves down by not investing in those things?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I know that in the case of England, of Great Britain, there was a lot of that where they started the Industrial Revolution. They were more or less at the forefront of it all.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, bit by bit, you get to a situation where there's just about nothing even made there anymore.
Yeah.
And so then you've left yourself massively vulnerable, and you're like, well, what are we actually making here now?
Yeah. And there's that balance that you talked about, it's gone. We're just consumers, we're not manufacturers.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so interesting when you do step back and you kind of look and you go, let's move away from the specifics of a certain thing, and let's look at what the overriding, is it about balance? Is it about the greater good? What's behind what we're seeing? I think it's very easy, going back to our earlier conversation about short attention spans and about what's really going on behind the scenes. I think that it's very easy for us to become so focused on the here and the now and what's in front of us. And sometimes you do. Look, sometimes, what do they say? It's just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me. Sometimes it might be a conspiracy theory, but sometimes there's actually a conspiracy there as well.
Yeah.
It's not to say that there aren't things going on behind the scenes that we don't see. Sometimes they're intentional, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good to step back and step out of the here and now and the me. And I think society's very much about keeping us busy with putting food on the table and raising our families.
Keeping us on that treadmill.
Yeah. that it does distract us away from the bigger picture and what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
So what are you working on at the moment?
I'm kind of in between now. So I was in China for 2.5 months last year, filming a part 4 in China's most successful film franchise called Detective Chinatown. So whenever I hadn't heard of it, but when I told people, it's like saying that you're in the next Fast and Furious. Like,
Yeah.
So the first one. So basically, the story is that it's set in somewhere else. So the first one was set in Bangkok, Chinatown. I think the second one was Tokyo, Chinatown. The third one was New York, Chinatown. And crime or a murder has taken place, and these 2 Chinese detectives come in and they work with local police and solve the murder. Right. So it's like a comedy action. It's really cool because Chinese films, especially this Detective Chinatown, it's not really like, you can't put it in a genre because it's got a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And so the film that I did is Detective Chinatown 1900. It's the first one that's not set in modern day.
In modern times.
It's still set in a Chinatown,
Right.
which is San Francisco, but it's set in the year 1900.
And it's so freaking cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's set in a time where we've just had the gold rush.
Yeah.
So a lot of Chinese people have come there, and Chinatown's growing really fast. It's become the biggest Chinatown outside China in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And all the whiteys are like, there's too many Chinese people here, you know. We've got to get them out. And so there's a lot of racial tension, and I learned a lot filming it. You know, you do get white guilt from watching and being in that. So I played the chief of police, Lance, and John Cusack was in it, and he played the governor. He was running for governor, and me and him are kind of in cahoots. And but my character's cool because he's not just like a stereotypical bad, corrupt chief of police. He does help these Chinese detectives, and he does have a moral compass.
Yeah.
Even though when I got the sides to do the audition, it just seemed like, oh, this is a corrupt policeman. But I didn't play my audition like that. I played like he was troubled. And I think whenever you get a bad guy role, if you play it like a good guy, I'm only bad because of my circumstances in life.
Or a particular goal.
That's
or
right.
That's
right. I think it makes for a way more interesting bad guy.
Definitely.
Than like a
Yeah.
Yeah, so I played it like that.
Swirling the handlebars.
Yeah. And I got the part, and it was great. And it launched, it was released at Chinese New Year, and it's done 500 million at the box office.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So I contacted Phil Holder at the Warehouse, where we went and studied drama. And I said, so am I the biggest box office
for sure.
Warehouse graduate? And he goes, what's the film done? And I said 500 million. And he said, I think you're leading by about 490 million.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? So I wonder if I'm the most famous Australian actor that no one's ever heard of.
Definitely. You're the most famous Australian I know that I've actually met in real life. What are you talking about?
I mean, who's been in a film, unless it's like a Marvel or a Star Wars, who's been in a $500 million film?
100%.
Yeah.
Look, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Having studied alongside of you, and I'm yet to do my $500 million film.
That's US too.
That's US.
That's US.
Who's counting, right?
So what's that like? Over $1 billion Australian with the dollar right now?
Is that released in Australia, or is it going to be?
It was at Event and Hoyts, but it just kind of ran for 2 weeks during Chinese New Year.
Oh, I see.
I think it's still at the cinemas in China because it's had a prolonged
definitely.
success.
Because to them, like you say, it's a big deal.
Yeah. But in Australia, I had friends go and see it at the cinemas at the Chinese theatre in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah. So it had a worldwide cinematic release. I did a little junket tour in Sydney and Melbourne, Chinatown.
Yeah. And I've seen some of the behind the scenes footage that you've been posting as well. It looks amazing.
Yeah. Like, you should have seen this set that they built in this little city in the middle of nowhere, a 4-hour drive from Beijing. We just got I guess the local government said, yeah, you can build the set here, and it wasn't a set. It was a functioning block, probably the size of Surfers Paradise, like 5 or 6 streets that way, 5 or 6 streets this way, and they weren't like cardboard buildings. It was like the back lot at Universal Studios times 20.
Wow.
So the car chases, not car chases, horse and
The
cart
horse and
chases,
cart, yeah.
and there was a few cars, but the chases that you see, like they're real, going through these streets, and there's people running alongside the building. There's like minimal green screen. So I often saw John Cusack on set, just like filming 360 degrees, and I'd just see him, and he'd be like, he said, I've never seen anything like it.
Wow.
In America, we'll build one side, green screen
And
the
it's
rest. It's all fake. But whereas here, the cobblestone streets, the laundromat, you know how they've got those fire escape things on the outside.
Yeah.
We filmed inside. Each one is a functional building. And you know how San Francisco's got hills?
Yep.
There's this, it's all built up on concrete pylons, so they've got those hills.
Wow.
And John Cusack was just like, never seen anything like it.
Because it's one thing to recreate San Francisco, hard enough on its own. It's another thing to recreate San Francisco 120 odd years ago.
With the hills, a functioning tram that goes through it, a courthouse, everything. Like when you get to set, you know, you got to start make believing. You don't have to there. Like before you get your hair and makeup done, before you're in your costume, you already feel like you've gone back in time and you're in San Francisco in the 1900s. Like it makes your work as an actor so... I've never been in a fully green screened like Star Wars film anyway, so I don't know, but I imagine it would be hard to just pretend in that.
Well, I've heard a lot of actors
studio.
even from Star Wars that have said exactly, and like really good, really established actors have said the same thing. It's you, a green screen, and a tennis ball hanging from a string.
Yeah.
And like, okay, go do your scene.
Yeah.
Whereas, as any great actor will tell you, the more you can actually immerse yourself in that actual situation, the better.
Yeah.
The more there's an actual set and the costumes and everything around you.
It was 80% done.
Yeah.
The remaining 20% was just your performance, delivering the lines.
And that's got to make your job as an actor that much
way
easier.
Way easier. It was incredible. And now it's turned into a Universal Studios type open holiday tourist destination. I'm sure that they'll use it for another film if there's like a 1900s set film. They can just tweak facades.
It'll be really interesting to see what becomes from it, whether they do turn it into a permanent studio that they use for other things, or...
I think that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, that'd definitely make sense.
Yeah.
And then, build
so
beyond
cool.
that.
I mean, you would have just been blown away. You got to see the film.
Yeah. Where can we see it in Australia? Do you know?
I watched the first one on Apple TV, like how you rent it.
Yep.
I'm sure that this one will be available somehow on some streaming service because it's been a success and there's still going to be demand for
definitely.
it.
Yeah. I'll see what we can do, and we'll see if we can get some information in the comments about where people can watch it, and
all right,
they can obviously hit IMDb and find out a lot more about it. What about you? Where can people go to find out more about the man, the myth, the legend?
I'm trying to do more social media. I've got quite a big following in China on the Chinese TikTok, which is called Douyin and Red Note.
And please say hi to all of your friends, followers, and fans in China.
Thank you. I will tell them you said hi. I also have Instagram and TikTok, Sam Hayden-Smith. Look me up. I'm trying to post more on my Western social media.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very important.
Yeah.
It is very important just for people to have that ability to have that point of being able to connect with you, keep up with your latest projects, keep up with where you're at and what's going on, for sure. 100%. I think one of a really good point just quickly on that too is that you're the owner and the producer of that media.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
You're not relying on someone else's version of you
Yeah.
You have control on it. And I think we've seen that a lot, whether it's by politicians or celebrities or actors. They've realized that they have the full control over that media, and that's been one of the greatest things for anyone, whether it's because you've got a podcast or because you're an actor or because you're a politician or a celebrity. That ability to have that control over the entire process and what gets released and what doesn't, and you're releasing your truth that way, and not someone else's narrative, the story or agenda that they're trying to push forward about you. So that's one of the great, how lucky are we to have that ability for you to talk to tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people.
You can live stream and speak to people in real time.
Yeah, crazy. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, thank you so much for today. It's been awesome catching up with you. I can promise you that we won't wait until another major outbreak or some kind of major upheaval, some pandemic, before we catch up again. But thank you so much for coming along today. It's been fantastic, and we will definitely be doing it again soon.
Thank you, Craig Griffin official.
Thank you, the man, the myth, the legend that is Sam Hayden-Smith. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Peace out.